Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Foulkes, and I'm the Director General of the Institution of Civil Engineers. For those of you who don't know who we are, the IC is an independent charitable body that qualifies and represents about 80,000 professional civil engineers around the world. And as part of our obligation to act in the public interest, we use our members' global knowledge and their collective expertise to help inform the public policy debate wherever it's possible around the world to engage with governments in that sometimes critical manner. Fortunately, the United Kingdom is one of those places. So I'm delighted to be asked to give one of the keynote addresses at this very important and timely conference. Now, everything has to be paid for by somebody. And so funding is at the heart of the ICE's manifesto for UK infrastructure, which we published earlier this year. We believe that we all need to play a part in helping to find new ways to channel many billions of pounds worth of investment into UK infrastructure over the coming decade, and Chris has outlined the important background to that. We've been arguing for some time that this will require new thinking. Not just about financial mechanisms and funding sources, important though those are, of course, but also about the UK's wider strategy for ensuring that the nation has the infrastructure assets and the networks that it needs to thrive. So over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to place our proposal for a national infrastructure investment bank in this broader strategic context. And I'm also going to reflect on some of the very welcome steps in the right direction, I believe, that the present government has taken during the past year, and in particular the creation of Infrastructure UK, and offer some ideas about how we can build on them. So why do we need to invest more in our national infrastructure? These figures on the screen now are drawn from the World Economic Forum's annual Global Competitiveness Report. And as you can see, the UK is ranking round about the middle of the table in world infrastructure. But does this matter? Well, absolutely. I mean, it certainly matters. And the idea of national infrastructure, both as a problem, but also as an opportunity, is now rightly, some might say belatedly, becoming far higher on the political agenda. In February this year, all three major parties attended an infrastructure finance summit hosted by the ICE, with one of our speakers later today, Edward Lord of Partnerships UK, in the chair. Despite this being the election season, and then it was the pre-election season, I suppose, there was an encouraging degree of consensus on the need for maintaining investment. And just as pleasingly, there was also consensus on why. On the economic side, OECD's last biennial survey of the UK noted that historic underinvestment, particularly in transport and telecommunications, is a key factor holding back the economy, holding back economic performance and productivity growth. And outside the pure economic sphere, it's clear that new national infrastructure will be central to meeting our very ambitious climate change targets. Energy generation, transport and heat, all infrastructure-heavy sectors, account for the bulk of our carbon emissions. And finally, as Ofgem has recently reminded us, the UK needs to act urgently to replace electricity generation capacity, which will be lost in the coming years as the older nuclear and coal-fired power stations go offline in the near future. So in short, we're in a period where the UK needs a huge investment in its critical national infrastructure. How big? Well, Policy Exchange, the prominent think tank, has used published data, largely from the government, largely from Treasury, to come up with a figure of £434 billion over the next 10 years. Infrastructure UK, which is a branch of the Treasury, in their strategy for national infrastructure, which was published a couple of weeks ago on Budget Day, acknowledged that the demand for infrastructure investment in the UK is expected to be in the range of £40 to £50 billion per annum until 2030 and possibly beyond, significantly exceeding recent historical average of approximately £30 billion per annum. Thus, we are already underspending on infrastructure even before the expected cuts in public sector capital works programmes start to hit. So it's very clear that we need to generate new mechanisms for directing funds into the development of our critical infrastructure networks. And as Infrastructure UK has also acknowledged, the bulk of this money is going to have to come from the private sector. So, how can this be done? Well, there are a number of widely recognised barriers to securing private investment for infrastructure. While debt financing is available for some well-structured projects, in general, ICE members working on major projects are reporting real problems with the availability of funds, their cost, and the time period in which investors are seeking a return. A number of suppliers of finance have exited the market or have severely reduced their lending in recent months, and many remaining participants are unwilling to lend for more than 7 years, a timescale which is out of kilter with the much longer lifespan of major infrastructure projects. Despite efforts to woo them, I'm yet to see any signs of investors with longer horizons, such as pension funds, moving into the sector on a significant scale, although I'm delighted to be proved wrong. So how do we overcome these problems? Well, let's start with cost, and for cost, read risk. Government should be applauded for eventually grasping that it has itself been a cause of some high funding costs, and has subsequently started taking concerted action to reduce political risk. ICE has long campaigned for a more strategic approach to infrastructure development and for the creation of Infrastructure UK, with its ongoing work to develop a 50-year strategic framework is a huge step forward. Alongside Infrastructure UK, the recent Planning Act is now ushering in a new consenting regime for major projects, and its top-level national policy statements for our main networks, combined with the recent appointment of a chief construction advisor to government, should stimulate a far better dialogue between government and the industry. This approach will have wider benefits for project delivery. Poor information on future demand has been a bugbear in our industry for many decades, contributing to stop-start pattern of workflow, which has held down investment in skills and innovation, and in its turn has significantly constrained the financial return on investment. Government may also need to be more proactive in other ways. For example, in risk allocation, the scale of financial risk associated with construction phase of truly national significant infrastructure projects is enormous. The experience of the Channel Tunnel rail link, High Speed 1, is instructive. Even in the relatively benign financial climate of the late 1990s and early 2000s, government had to make several interventions, including backing London and Continental Railway bonds to support the first phase of construction, and eventually bringing LCR into public ownership in 2009. Clearly, few projects are on that kind of scale where problems could threaten the existence of the delivery partners themselves, but government does need to continue to be realistic about the potential for risk transfer during construction. In the recent budget, it was announced that Channel Tunnel Rail Link is one of the assets to be sold to provide initial capital for the new Green Investment Bank. And this may also be indicative of future practice, with government taking a stake to get strategically important projects moving. As operational projects are more attractive to investors, including long-term investors, it should be possible for government to sell its stake on more mature assets, freeing funds for further investment. And there are lessons to be learned from the Office of Nuclear Development in DEC,